Hello, everybody. My name is Jorge Coca. I come here representing Very Good Ventures, a company that specializes in Flutter development. And it's a real pleasure because this is our first time at AGL. It's been a wonderful, actually yesterday and today, wonderful set of sessions where we've been learning a lot about AGL. And we wanted to share with you a little bit of our experience building Flutter applications, even in the context of automotive. I think that this is something that has a lot of potential for the future. But before we talk about the future, actually, this is a problem that has been obsessing me personally for the last 10 years. About 10 years ago, I started working at BMW. This is before Very Good Ventures. And it was a great job. But all of a sudden, as an engineer, I realized that there are screens on the vehicle, there are screens on the phone. You go to the dealer, they have screens. And my mom, who's very smart, but she's not an engineer, asked me, oh, so you're going to be building applications for the phone and for the vehicle? And I was, no, only for the phone. I don't know how to touch the vehicle. And she made a very clever comment. Isn't that just a screen that you can touch? Of course, we all know that it's not that simple. But for her, it is. And actually, for most of the users, it's that simple. It's just a computer. It's just a screen that you can touch. As I said, I've been obsessing with this problem as part of working at BMW. We've helped racing teams actually build their telemetry, observability, and user-focused applications. So there's a bunch of screens in there related to how we collect telemetry, how we present their vehicle information. And most recently, for the last few years, we've been helping Toyota to build their IVI in Flutter, and most recently, the Fluoride game engine as well. So why is front-end so fragmented in the vehicle industry? It looks something like this, right? Like the car, as of today, we have the instrument cluster, IVI, we have our different rear dashboards. Even now, cars are shipping smaller screens to control the windows, to control the center console. And then on top of that, we have the heads-up display. It's a complex screen scenario. But then outside the vehicle itself, we have our companion mobile applications. We have our different experiments and smart devices. And who knows what's going to be the future, right? And then on top of that, you go to the website of the automotive brand, and then you have your web car configuration, multiple touch points just to either interact with your vehicle, to build your vehicle, or check the status of your vehicle. So as you can see, there are screens everywhere, and pretty much for each one of these screens, again, like it's just a screen that you can touch. It's as simple as that. There are different technologies. And we've been talking for the last 2 days about how AGL is actually simplifying the technology stack, but then we get to the front end and we have all this fragmentation. We see an instrument cluster being built with CANSI, we see the center console being built with Qt, we have on our mobile phones Android, iOS, native solutions, then we go to the website, it's HTML5. That gets expensive, that gets complicated, that gets out of sync, right? We have situations where like our instrument cluster might look like a 2015 instrument cluster, but IVI might look like it's 2025 or 2026. So we're starting to see that the brand starts to drift across surfaces. We see that the companion app, when you put it next to your vehicle, they don't feel like they belong to the same brand. That's a challenge. That doesn't actually help users to engage with a very expensive product that is the vehicle. Then you go to your dealer, you go to the website, and again, it offers a very different experience. And that means that we are shipping innovation unevenly, even if we get the opportunity to ship innovation, right? Because we are touching each one of these surfaces one at a time. It requires different teams. It requires different roadmaps, right? And even when we try to share, we're still repeating that work. Let's say we have 7 screens, 7 different times, right? It gets very pricey. And us, when we're like in the middle of the program, we think that that is something that like the engineering organization or like our organization themselves, we pay the price, we pay the penalty, but that's not true. It's the users, right? It's the users that they don't see that they're getting the return of investment out of the product that they purchase. So there's a very simple solution. Flutter is the way. Flutter allows you to run your experiences on every single screen that you can touch, whether it's your smartwatch, your phone, your vehicle, or like the Jumbotron in the Madison Square Garden, you have no problems to use Flutter there. In addition to that, it's the real first multi-platform solution. In the past, especially in the mobile world, we've seen things like, oh, I can kind of like do multi-platform for mobile and iOS, but then you cannot pour that out to your vehicle. But with Flutter, you can. Toyota has proven that, AEL has proven that, right? So that means that you can pour your experiences to the vehicle, to the phone, or every new surface that you need. You're decoupled from the operating system. It's also fast. It compiles to native code. Your binary is going to be as small as possible. It doesn't introduce any overhead, right? So you can be as effective as necessary and as performant as necessary, whether that's 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second or whatever is going to be needed in the future, right? Also, when it comes to the developer experience, it's highly productive. With very little code, you can do highly expressive applications, very complex animations, and especially in the context of the vehicle, you know that you're not going to be introducing like any performance degradation, junk, or anything like that, which is critical for things like instrument cluster, right? Where like you need to see what's your speed, the tachometer, like in real time, right? But then as developers are producing their code, they have access to something called hot reload. So as long as they save the changes, modifying the theme, adding new widgets, they see their changes in real time, and that's very powerful. No more like compilation cycles or like long development cycles. And then in addition, it's very scalable. Like you have full control over every single pixel. You have control over your entire experience across the entire digital stack. So this is wonderful, but how do we make it happen? Because the reality is that even though we can share code, our application on the vehicle and our application on the phone, they're two different applications. It's not that we're going to be sharing the entire code base, right? And that's where we start drifting a little bit the mental model. Because if you see what's kind of like the business entry line for Flutter, is like, hey, write once, run everywhere. And that is very true. But like this idea of write once, we might need to have a specialization, right? So what we want to be thinking about is like, we're going to be sharing the layers that need to be shared. And then we're going to be isolating the layers that we don't need to be shared. Like for the vehicle, you don't need to integrate your mobile stack. And for the mobile stack, you don't need to integrate the vehicle. So you're going to start modularizing your code base in such a way that you can reuse what needs to be reused. Think about branding. Think about design tokens. Think about your widget catalog. But then there's going to be other integrations, like on the vehicle, you're going to have your vehicle signals and things like that. While on the phone, you might just have access to the GPS of the phone. All those are going to be independent, and they're never going to know about each other. So we start here. Our architecture, at a very high level, this is a high-level simplification, might have 4 different layers. The first one might be your presentation side. That's where we introduce our design tokens, our molecules, widgets, and we control the UI state. Hey, there's a screen that is loading, I get the errors, I get the results, whatever that is, right? And for that presentation layer, you can build different applications, one targeting your instrument cluster, one targeting infotainment systems, phone, web, the dealer kiosk, whatever you need, you can have an application and an entry point for that. As a second layer, we talk about the domain layer. This is kind of like an abstraction built on Dart, the language that powers Flutter, to manage your vehicle state or any business logic that you might need. Then on the third layer, that's when we start integrating a little bit with what is going on at the operating system level. Before that, like everything was pretty much abstracted, right? But when we're working on the vehicle side, you might need to start integrated with your embedder, with like input modes and all the stuff. Well, if you're working for like your phone, your companion applications, it might be a different thing. And then the low-level layer is where we have finally the operating system, whether that's Android, iOS, Windows, web, Automotive grade Linux, right? Every operating system can be supported by Flutter. And that's what makes it very interesting for this solution. It's completely portable. You are decoupling yourself, your UI, from the operating system. So that means that we can build multiple applications. In this case, we're taking as a reference, like an example of a IVI app. And we're going to have in here is like, we're going to build our application as if it was a puzzle. Like we have Lego pieces that would be our modules, right? We could have our brand, widget tokens, and design system on one side, but then we have the vehicle integrations, we might have user domain, or navigation, or sales, right? And we can decide as we compile our application, what are the modules that we need to integrate, and the modules that we don't need to integrate. They might be part of our module catalog, but that application necessarily might not need all that information, right? So this is something that creates like a very collaborative environment. It also creates a place where like you actually can focus domain knowledge for those areas where you need it. If you are like an expert in UI, you can live in the presentation side. Well, if you are a vehicle signal expert and you need like low latency, real time, you can be working on the low level modules without having to know what's going on the UI side and vice versa. So if we start kind of like decomposing each one of these layers, the first thing that we will realize is that by having this approach, we can have the same widget targeting different platforms. So for example, we're gonna take a look to a very simple speedometer. For IVI, it might look as simple as like the units and then the speed on top. For the instrument cluster, even though we're calling it the same widget, looks different, but that's totally fine. Like we can introduce whatever animations and things like that. And if we wanted to have a speedometer for the phone where like we can check in real time the speed of the vehicle, it might also have a different look and feel, more like a UI peel or anything like that, right? So that means that we might have one single widget, but in reality, we might be talking with, like working with different tokens, molecules, or behaviors. But from the point of view of the code that we're defining, and this is how it would look on the Flutter side, it's just a single widget, it's just the speedometer that then gets specialized based on the platforms that you want to target. So if you wanted to target iOS and Android, you could have then your private mobile speedometer. If you wanted to target automotive grade Linux, you could have your private AGL speedometer, and so forth and so on. That also means that when we're connecting our presentation layer to our domain layer, we can have a single source of truth. And this is highly important because there's nothing, at least for me as a consumer, more annoying than when I know that my vehicle is parked on my garage, but then I go to my phone and the last park location is somewhere 200 miles away from where I am. And believe it or not, that happens quite often. I don't know if it's an issue of just my vehicle or like in general, but we want to have a single source of truth in such a way that each one of these surfaces, each one of these apps will subscribe to state streams, right? We can create our own latency budgets because like what we need for the instrument cluster might not be the same thing that we need for the rear seat, right? The most important thing is like there's no direct communication between each one of those surfaces. They're completely independent. They will display the same information, but one can operate independent from each other. This also means that when one of these surfaces fails, the system still keeps working. It's just like that surface will need to be rebooted, will need to be restarted or like fixed or whatever, but your entire system won't break, and that's great, right? Because you can have truly these independent surfaces, these independent apps. You can resubscribe anytime you need it, right? And that allows you to have like that guarantee that your system is gonna be always up to date and in sync with each other. Then the platform integration, and this is where like it's very important for automotive grade Linux, right? Like we have our Flutter applications, and that Flutter application, I can make it portable. I could run my dashboard like IVI on top of AGL. That's what we would do here with the Flutter embedder. But it actually, if I want to have a more like productive developer experience, I could mock up like all the vehicle signals and run it as a macOS application because like I just want to see how the UI behaves. I just want to have like faster prototyping. I don't want to go through the building like an image or anything like that, right? So that is the beauty of like how composable it is, how portable it is. But then what allows you to run Flutter on top of the Flutter embedded for AGL is that you can normalize your inputs, right? Like some vehicles we're gonna have like the touch rotary, you can have like voice input, hard keys, whatever that needs. All your vehicle signals are gonna be abstracted and your experience is gonna be self-contained and portable. So, is all that easy? Because I know that I'm simplifying a lot of things that are very, very complex, that this group has been trying to work and operate for a couple of years, right? So where's the trick? Well, there's a few tricks to make this Flutter experience across your entire digital stack work and work really well. And the first one might not be actually technology. Technology relatively is an easy problem, but especially if you think about an automotive company, many of you work at automotive companies, right? They're huge. Sometimes the challenge is like, oh, the IVI team doesn't know what's going on with the phone application. So finding that alignment, aligning roadmaps, right? Making sure that like, if we're gonna be sharing efforts, that it's architecture to support all the platforms that we want to support and all the stuff requires strong organization alignment, right? And that sometimes is the first kind of like obstacle here. It's solvable. There are ways to do that. It requires commitment. It requires a strategy from companies, right? But it's totally solvable. The other part, and this is something that we have to be very open to talk about it in this forum here, the developer experience when it comes to deploying Flutter applications in the vehicle is not up to par to what we experience when we work on mobile applications or desktop applications, right? We're talking about things like code reload in milliseconds, instant deploy to vehicles, the embedded, right, or like working examples. We will get there. That's part of the reason why Very Good Ventures is joining AGL. But I do think that today, the developer experience when targeting like phones is a little bit better, right? The goal is to eliminate friction, right? So the process can spark creativity. We can standardize like the process from deployment to debugging and things like that, and invite contributors, especially from all backgrounds, to help them build Flutter applications for automotive. It also, this investment is front-loaded, right? When we're talking about modularization, where we're talking about sharing modules, like it requires like very strong public APIs, strong testing, a strong CI/CD integration. And if you only have one surface, might not be worth it, but most likely vehicle companies are gonna have more than one surface, right? So this is the type of question in which like, if you know that you're gonna be supporting IC, IVI, rear seat screens, and you wanna run Flutter across your entire stack, it's worth to architect this from the very beginning in such a way that is modularized, reusable, that takes your branding into account, that is responsive when it comes to designing the surfaces where it's gonna be rendered. The good news is when you achieve that, the same architecture is your entire digital stack. And this is a very powerful concept because, as I said, you might have UI engineers that now can move across the entire organization to build exciting applications. One day might be for a vehicle, a different day might be for the sales organization. Like you can really target where you need to go and move your efforts, right? And this is also enabling feature development. If tomorrow there's a new type of operating system or screen or experience popping up that we need to support, we have the foundational elements to get us there in a matter of 1, 2, 3 sprints and not in a matter of years. That reduces significantly your investment, your effort, and allows you to innovate faster as a brand. So what we're trying to do with these experiences with faster, right, like with Flutter, is to be able to ship faster. We call it one team. It could be a large team, but like one organization, one design system with shared roadmaps, what allows us to tackle every single surface in a matter of sprints. We're also raising quality. Shared domains means that like at some point, even if there's like errors, bugs, or whatever, like we can focus more on performance for one module and not performance for 7 different modules, right? It's also gonna lower the cost because we're introducing a higher percentage of usability, and new surfaces don't become like such a big kind of like, oh my God, like what do we do? Like it becomes like much easier to adapt, and that's gonna help you to innovate faster, innovate more. I will be touching base on a little bit of later, but of course, like with AI these days, right? You can imagine that that's gonna be a significant change in every industry, like the vehicle industry as well. Generative UI is gonna be a big topic that it's coming. So how does this look in practice? We put together a very simple demo. I'm gonna present a video here of a vehicle dashboard and a phone that they share UI, they share widgets, they share some state, but they're completely independent applications from each other. One doesn't know about the other. And it starts to show a little bit how this would work in general. So we see in here like a speedometer, a map, a weather widget. With the phone application, we're gonna be introducing different use cases. So the first one is like, hey, we wanna introduce the tire pressure. So the dashboard is loading because it has received a signal, and now we see that it's loading the tire pressure. And as we can see in here, it's the same widget, but being displayed in very different dashboards. Now, the dashboard has a text box in which I can actually describe the UI that I wanna see. I ask the music player and the map widget, and that's what I get. So this is built in such a way that I can customize the look and feel of my application, but again, 2 different dashboard, like 2 different surfaces, 2 different applications. This demo, what we wanted to achieve and it might look very simple at a first glance, is that it's multi-platform by design with one single code base, right? It's a monorepo that is modularized. I can achieve code portability. So the widgets that you've seen in here, I'm not building two different widgets in two different technologies. It's the same widget being reused across Flutter. I could modify the look and feel per platform, but the code itself, the testing strategy, the deployment strategy, is exactly the same. That also means that there's no more siloed knowledge, and that is huge for the vehicle industry. It also achieves the highest level of performance. We can run at 60 frames per second. We can run even if we wanted at 120 frames per second without a problem. And that's great because we know that in the vehicle we have critical systems in which like dropping a frame or dropping multiple frames would be catastrophic, right? So even at the highest level of performance and security, Flutter delivers. This is going to also allow us to innovate, experiment, and scale. And that is a loop that we don't have to wait for big changes in the market, in the industry. Like now, with a simplified technology stack, we can actually reduce the time to market and be innovative, even for the most creative and demanding use cases, because that iteration loop across surfaces has been reduced, and we can pretty much like innovate all at once with a single roadmap. Before I finish, and I realize that I might finish a little bit earlier than everybody else, there's one more thing, because there's something about the demo that I showed that I said, like, hey, we can go multi-platform, right? We can prove that it's going to be highly performant, but this wouldn't be a tech talk if we didn't introduce AI, right? I'm sorry, no one is free of AI these days, but to me, this is a very exciting area because AI is going to affect how we develop these experiences, but also it's going to affect how users experience that particular experience. One of the things that I didn't talk about in the demo, and I'm going to play it again, is that if you look at the UI changes. In here, for example, on the dashboard, we see that we have 3 widgets at the top with the speedometer, weather, and a music player, and then the map. We simulate the tire pressure scenario, and all of a sudden the UI changes. Now we have a tire pressure widget that it's a little bit bigger with a speedometer. And then I go to the text box in my experience and I say, show the music player and the map. This UI is dynamic, it's changing on real time. This is the interesting part. None of these layouts have been created manually by a developer. What we have in here is a UI. Could be Gemini, could be Claude, but thanks to generative UI, we're composing that UI in real time based on the context of the application. The application has knowledge itself that, hey, I'm a vehicle dashboard. I'm presenting information to this user. We can inject different use cases, and also based on the intent. The way I drive my vehicle is very different than the way my wife drives her vehicle. We might want to have different experiences because we engage with the vehicle in a very different way, right? So Gen UI, something that, at least in the world of Flutter, didn't exist pretty much in December. Now it's something that can power the entire experience in your vehicle. I'm not saying that the way it's coded might pass our security standards and all the stuff, but now you can realize that you can have richer, more complex, more personalized experience than ever, right? Because I want you to picture this situation. The way you do your normal daily commute to work, it's very different than when you drive for leisure, right? So why the screen is the same? Why do I need to get stuck with the same UI, whether I'm like going for like a very exciting road trip or like I want to see the music cover being bigger and more personalized and all the stuff, right? Well, like for my daily commute, maybe I'm listening to a podcast. I want to know when there's traffic, but otherwise I know the routes. I don't need to see the map, right? That UI needs to change with the context and the intent. And that's what generative UI is going to help us doing. And this is like the perfect example of how you can innovate across your entire stack without having to repeat the work 6, 7 different times based on the number of screens that you have. You can get your widget catalog, let Gen UI run with it, and create those experiences. That also means that the same architecture, as we talked before, is not only your digital stack, but it's your innovation stack, right? And that is great because all of a sudden you can synchronize, you can think of the vehicle as a holistic experience inside the vehicle, outside the vehicle. And thanks to Flutter, thanks to AGL, that's easier than ever today. Before I finish, since this is our first time with the AGL group here, I wanted to explain why we're here, right? We see AGL as the most serious open automotive platform in the industry. And at the same time, Flutter is the most proactive UI toolkit for multi-surface products. We've been working with Flutter since 2016, 2017. Very Good Ventures is the company, like the first company in the world that created a production-grade Flutter experience. That was for Hamilton, the musical, something that was very popular in the US. We've been working with Toyota since the very early days of IVI and Flutter. Myself, working at BMW, introducing Flutter, like we took a big risk, like consuming Flutter when like it wasn't even on a stable version, and now it's powering the experience of millions of users across the world for BMW and Mini, right? We do believe that that combination is underused. We believe that there's a lot of potential to create exciting experiences in the vehicle and outside the vehicle, and that can be powered with Flutter. And that's our commitment to this group here. Like we want to make sure that not only we have a great operating system, but a great user experience, right? So your consumers, your drivers have the pleasure of driving not only like the vehicle, but like the machine of the future, right? So we want to raise that bar as much as possible. Thank you all so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your good presentations. And thank you for your support for us. So even though that the application for GUI is portable across the many different devices or environment of OS or so on, it's not really easy for us to do it because in the case of IVI, if its driver can see the screen, then the display must be very restrictive. I mean, the driver distraction regulation is existing in many countries, so that if it's in Europe only, that's easier. But except Europe, we have to align with the driver distraction regulations, anyways. And we sometimes change the words to shorten, to minimize the number of characters on the screen, to see the screen at a glance. They can easily tell that where the touch should be. And also the depth of the menus or screen change, it's a very, very restrictive in total, the task completion time, so that it's not so easy for us to use the same applications displaying application display across the many different devices, especially even in the vehicle, backseat, we can show everything, anything, and the main purpose for the displaying in the backseat is to enjoy the screen touching and playing with the graphics or such kind of things. But for the driver seat, it's very strict, very static, and easy to touch the buttons instantly. So that the edge of the button location must be pretty much stable on the screen. But in the back sheet, what we really want to do is the backseat passengers want to play with the hidden buttons or such kind of things, right? So it's totally different. So that you also have to consider how you can, treat those kind of multimodal application, GUI applications for those kind of things. Even though the same application with the same different models or views, with the contents is be similar, but the display drawing is slightly different. That kind of environment would be very much appreciated.
Yeah. So that's a great question. If we think of Flutter as just like the mechanism to paint pixels on the screen, right? Like that's what Toyota has done with IVI. It's like, okay, we can put Flutter on IVI. It's gonna pass all the security certificates and all that stuff. Gen UI, what I explained at the end, I just did it like that because I can, not because that would be the use case of the future. However, as we think of the vehicle of the future, right, there might be experiences that don't require you to be driving. Like if you're charging an electric car in a charging station. You might want to have something more dynamic, things like that, right? So that might be an area where like it might be interesting to explore. Also for voice assistants, when like the right conditions are met, if you're asking for like what's the score of my favorite sports team, you might want to have a different UI than if you ask like what's the weather in Tokyo in 2 hours, right? So for those cases, I think that generative UI might be interesting, but like with the right safety conditions met. But when we think about Flutter and how we can reuse it across the stack, it's just a matter of painting pixels. And I do believe that whatever safety regulations we need to meet, like Flutter will meet them without a problem.
Yeah, actually, the most time-consumed portion for developing a new application for GUI is after creating GUI, we have to make an evaluation with multiple, different ages, the testers, and how much sequence would be necessary to complete this task or such kind of things. And we have to keep the record of those kind of things as evidence. So it's really tough. So, but I like Flutter anyways, because the kanji is pretty nice, but very statically we have to program the software. Cute. It's very nice. It was very nice, but license scheme of Qt was crazy. And also HTML5, that's very good, but it takes a long time to boot up the systems and consume lots of memories. It's not really fully matched with our requirement in AVI, and Flutter is good. Very good.
I agree with that.
So that point is good, but still we have to consume the extra work for alignment or the driver destruction regulations. So
100%.
how you can support us for that purpose is pretty much appreciated for the future.
Yeah, and I think that this is where we can bring a lot of the experience that we have with Flutter, like with Toyota, where like they already went through the process and they have vehicles in the road, right? So there's a lot of like baggage in there when it comes to testing, when it comes to supporting different screen layouts, when it comes to supporting like the necessary like regulations that you need to meet on every market to launch your vehicle and get certified and all that stuff, right? So that's kind of like part of what I think we can bring to the group as well. It's like help to understand how Flutter can help you to not only like elevate the user experience, but to do it in a way that is safe and met all the criteria that you need to meet to put your vehicles on the road. All right, well, it's been a pleasure, and thank you so much.